What's up everyone, it's Goose, and today I'm going to be talking about a lot of the guitar gear that I have missed over the last few weeks. I had been traveling, I'd been trying to film videos in my off time when I'm able to, and I'm pretty proud of being able to output the way that I did over the last few weeks. But there are definitely some pieces of gear that I missed in the news, and while I have not tried these pieces of gear specifically, I've tried things that are very similar or related to these pieces of gear. So I thought I'd go over kind of a news segment. I've never done a news segment before, and I wonder if this will work out very well. But yeah, let's go over some new guitar gear that I missed. All right, so all the way back at the end of September, we have the Friedman IRX. And so what this is the preamp of a Friedman BE, I think. And I have a Friedman Runt right here, as well as a BEOD, which isn't really related. It's this one's solid state and the other are tubes. And this one is driven by tubes. So it will be probably more close to the actual Friedman experience. And at $500, I think this was, right? This is actually a lot that you're getting for it. So you have two channels, it looks like. Each channel has, it looks like the first channel has a bright switch, the second one has a tight switch. And on my Runt, I have those actually modded into the amp itself. Basically what the bright's going to give you is a slightly brighter voicing. Typically a modded Marshall like a Friedman will have slightly more tame or more polite highs, I would say. Because sometimes Marshalls can get kind of harsh up there. But yeah, so the bright lets you control the degree in which you want that to be tamed or not. That's really cool for this first channel. The second channel, the tight switch, it's basically a low cut. I've always felt like Dave Friedman really knows how to tighten up an amp. So for example, this is a Buxom boost, and the tight knob on this is always perfect because it never feels like it thins out your tone. Hey bud, what's up? You like this pedal? So this pedal has 3 switches, lets you switch between the channels as well as the boost for each channel. And from what I remember from either a Tone Talk or an interview, I think Dave Friedman said that this is basically the preamp that you would find in like a Synergy module. So a Synergy module is just $400 for any of the preamps, but you still have to get like a place to put the preamp so that you can send the signal over to your like DAW or to your cab or whatever. And this has all that in there, plus the outs that you would need that the Synergy module on its own doesn't provide. So for $500, just $100 more than a preamp on the Synergy website, you can just get this and basically have the Synergy preamp and a Syn 2, but just in this smaller container here. This also has an effects loop, which is kind of crazy, and looks like you can just go balanced out straight to a power amp, or you can just go straight to headphones, actually. That's kind of cool. It has MIDI capability, so you can use it to swap between things, and there is actually software behind this. So really, this is such a great entry level into the Friedman sound. And to me, the Friedman sound has always been kind of a Marshall, but with more detailed high end because it's not quite as spiky. Very tight, but still kind of punchy low end. And it's a little bit more on the dry side, so it actually blends, in my opinion, a little bit better with a ton of effects. It's an actual tube preamp, which you could argue you could get a modeler like an HX Stomp with a Friedman in it. In my experience, the biggest difference between a modeler and an actual tube amp is when you roll down volume on your guitar itself. Most modelers really don't handle that very well. And so you're getting that here for $500, and at some point, I would like to get one just because I am a big Friedman fan. All right, so next up is the HX1. This one I did not expect, but looking at this, I kind of figured out what this was trying to be. So Boss has these 200 series pedals, which are basically the effects for like a certain category within their modelers. So this one, for example, is the synthesizer effects. And you can run this with any like pedal board and have all the effects of like the GT1000 or something, or more actually in this. The Eventide H9 is also kind of similar to that. So this one is basically just an HX effects, but in like a smaller, more single block enclosure. It looks like you can scroll through effects pretty quickly. The one thing is that this can only run one effect at a time. So if you need to have both a delay and a reverb, it can only do one. But I think this is what, $250? Oh, it's $300. But I think for $300, what you're getting is a pedal that can be any pedal. So think about like the boutique stuff. Some of those pedals come in at about $200, which is less than this, but this one can be just any pedal. And obviously digital versus analog, that's like another like conversation to be had. But I could think about this as like a pedal where if I just needed a delay of some sort and I didn't have a delay pedal, I could just grab this and use it for that. And if I acquire a delay pedal I really like later on, I can move this somewhere else in my chain and use it as like a chorus or something. So I think that's where this use really is. It's really a kind of jack of all trades pedal. I think 300's like right where I feel like it would be a little too expensive, but an HX Effects is like twice the price of this, so I don't know. Also, I'm like imagining a pedal board with just like 5 of these running different effects. And I think that would be a pretty hilarious board. All right, so next we have the Rev Dynamis D40. So the Rev D20 is like their clean sort of, I want to say it's like a Fendery amp, basically like a pedal platform amp. So if you have any pedals you want to run into a clean amp, that would be like a really good 20-watt pedal for that. They're releasing a 40-watt version of that. And I actually think that these kind of amps are very important for people who use like modelers like I do. Like I could take my Quad Cortex or my FM9 and run it into the power amp of this and run a cab with it. And honestly, I think that's a better, more natural sounding way to run an amp instead of like an FRFR. And there's 2 channels. The one's the clean one that I was mentioning earlier, and the other one is a more driven sound. And like all of the rev amps, one of the biggest advantages to having something like this is that not only can it run your cab, but because it has built-in 2 notes torpedo, you can send to front of house too. I tried some of their tones through their pedals, through the small lunchbox amps, and personally I just like the Rev feature set. The tones might not be exactly for me. Again, I'm kind of a Friedman sort of guy, and if you have like pedal distortion or something, you can run it straight through this. So if I wanted to use pedal distortion like on my Friedman BOD here into this Rev amp and then send it to front of house and then also send it to a cabinet, this Rev could do that for me. Another thing that's cool about Rev is that you can just customize it. But look, I can make mine purple. Kind of looks like a Game Boy Advance. All right, so the last piece of news is the PRS MT100. We've had the MT15 for a really long time. It's a little lunchbox amp, 15 watts. Actually kind of sounds like it's more like a 30-watt amp because it's using full 6L6s. And now we have the full amp. So if y'all aren't familiar with the sound, basically Mark Tremonti wanted to, at least from what I remember, Mark Tremonti wanted to blend the Uberschall and dual rectifier sounds together. So the MT100 is kind of the favorite traits that Mark Tremonti had from those 2 amplifiers blended into one. And so originally, if I remember correctly, he ran an Uberschall and a dual rectifier. And then the Uberschall got replaced with an Archon. Both of those are relatively dark amps, blended with the dual rectifier, which kind of has more of a searing high end in my opinion. That actually sounds pretty awesome. And I think he's just running 2 of these now instead of like the dual rectifier and the Bogners. So I know there's a clean channel, which is probably a Fendery clean, I would assume. The lead channel is going to be that blend that I mentioned earlier of like the Uberschall and the rectifier. I think a lot of people have actually described this as the rectifier that Mesa won't build. And I think the middle channel, so if you look at the amp here, there's 3 channels here, and I think this overdrive channel is supposed to be based on a Dumble. And I'm actually a big fan of simple circuits, so the fact that the designer had said that this is one of the more simple designs he's done is actually good. If you ever follow anyone on YouTube like Psionic Audio or Brad's Guitar Garage, it's basically known that if an amplifier is very complicated, like it has a lot of switches or it has a lot of like features in it, complicated design will often make it really hard to repair. I'm curious to see if this one will be built better. And the fact that this is less than $2,000 is pretty good. That's less than the cost of a dual rectifier. So if you want a dual rectifier tone with a bit more of a, I want to say a warmer Uberschall kind of take to it, then this might be like the perfect amp. All right, so maybe the moment that y'all been waiting for, maybe the moment that no one's been waiting for. Can someone give credit to Kiesel for their soft case? It's actually really amazing. Ready? Look at that. This Koa top is unreal. All right, so this is a Kiesel Solo. This is sort of their Telecaster shaped guitar. And the thing about this one that I really was excited for was that the fact that it is a 26.5-inch scale. So it is a little longer than your usual 25.5, but I needed this to be in drop A sharp. So the extra scale length actually works in the favor for this guitar. The pickups I have in here are DiMarzio Illuminator and the Air Norton. I chose the 4x2 headstock here. It is a little smaller, and I knew this was going to be a longer scale length guitar. So I wanted the headstock to not be too large to make it like way out here or something. I have a roasted maple neck on this. I think it's just an alder body. I didn't even opt for the master grade version of the Koa, but it is chambered. It's actually really hollow sounding. But it's super light because it's chambered, and I have a royal ebony fretboard on this, just like on my Osiris, because I like how that looks. And the biggest reason why I bought this Kiesel is because I just liked my Osiris so much that I just decided to order another one of these. I've always wanted a Koa up top guitar. I've just loved how Koa wood looks. I didn't want it to look too fancy though, even though this is pretty nice. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's hear it. All right, so that's the guitar. I'm super stoked about it. And so yeah, if y'all enjoyed this kind of video, like this kind of like news / update segment on the channel, let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It greatly helps out my channel. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Later.